Next, we're looking at the nervous system. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that can trigger an electrical impulse in a neuron. What is the gap between two neurons called? The gap is called the synapse or a synapse, and so electrical impulses will travel here, and then the electrical signaling will change to a chemical signaling. These things are called neurotransmitters over here. These are chemicals, and that will create an electric impulse over here, so we switch back to electrical signaling. For this system to work, these neurotransmitters, which are released from one neuron, must bind to receptor sites on the end of another neuron. Then it says, drinking alcohol inhibits the action of some neurotransmitters. Inhibits means stops or impairs or reduces the action of some neurotransmitters. Explain how the reactions of a person are affected by alcohol. Explain how the reactions, how quickly they respond, how that's affected. Be very careful with your language here. Even if you understand it in your head, you can make an easy mistake. Now you may realize that your reflexes slow down, but a way of expressing that is by saying reaction time increases. That might sound wrong to you, but think about it. The time it takes for you to react gets longer, so your reaction time increases. You can also say reactions slow down, but it's an explain question. So that's what happens, but you now have to say why it happens. So it tells you that it's because it inhibits the action of some neurotransmitters, so you get less neurotransmission. In other words, you get less of these moving across the synapse. So now let's say there's one or none. So it takes longer to create an electrical impulse in the next neuron. This is also on the nervous system, but it's an applied question and can throw some people off. So it doesn't matter really how much you've revised for a question like this. If you can't figure out from the clues given in the question how to answer it, you might not get it right. It's not that difficult though. Some myelinated motor neurons transmit impulses at speeds of approximately 100 meters per second. Figure 7 shows a technique used to measure the speed of nerve impulses in the lower leg. So let's have a look at this. Top electrode stimulates a neuron. Lower electrode detects the impulse. So effectively, this one stimulates a neuron, causes an electrical impulse to be sent down, which is then picked up here. And you can assume that the computer can time how long it takes for this neuron impulse to travel from here to here. So what we're being asked to do here is calculate the speed of the nerve impulse. So how quickly does it travel from here to here? So back to our physics equations, if you remember, speed is distance divided by time. But you don't actually have to calculate anything, you just have to explain how you would calculate it using this equipment. So for 1 mark, you'd measure the distance between the two electrodes. You must refer to the equipment because it says explain how the technique's shown. And then you'd use the computer to find the time it takes the impulse to travel between them. And personally, I would add divide distance by the time, so it shows that you know how to calculate the speed as well. So this is quite a tricky question. It says Guillain-Barré syndrome is a disease that causes the body to break down the myelin sheath. So this breaks down on the motor neurons, and you must understand it's motor neurons. This is important. Explain why this syndrome can cause reduced movement of the legs. So remember, this is an explain question. We have to give a reason. Well, firstly, it's important to understand what a myelin sheath is. So a motor neuron is basically a nerve cell that connects to muscles. So it will deliver electrical impulses to muscles so they can contract and we can move. A myelin sheath is basically rolls of fat around the axon of a neuron here in cross section, and that allows the impulse not to travel like this slowly, but it allows it to leap like this very, very quickly. So if there's no myelin sheath, if this thing is now gone, then basically what happens is the impulse will travel much slower. And that will affect how quickly we can contract our muscles. So to say this, we say slower conduction of impulses reduces muscle contraction, because that will explain how this breakdown of the myelin sheath, slower conduction of impulses, results in reduced movement. If we don't talk about muscles, we're not really relating it to this idea of movement, so reduces muscle contraction.